Greetings, folks, and welcome to Mission Impossible, Remote Learning for Children with ADHD. We're going to give just a few minutes to let people trickle in, but now that you're here, we would love to hear from you. If you would just like to use the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen to let us know how you're doing and maybe where you're tuning in from. We'd love to know where folks are listening. All right, I would love to get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Mission Impossible, Remote Learning for Children with ADHD. This presentation is brought to you by the Center for ADHD Awareness Canada, also known as CADAC. We're a national charity organization dedicated to improving the lives of those with ADHD through awareness, education, and advocacy. This webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be sent out and available to registrants later this week. We are pleased to be offering this webinar at no cost as we respond to the needs of our community during the COVID-19 crisis. CADAC is the only national nonprofit that focuses solely on ADHD, and if you're in a position to give, we would greatly appreciate a donation of any size to support this work. The recommended donation is $10, which is the usual cost of our webinars, and you can make that gift by clicking the donate button on our website. A few housekeeping notes. All attendee lines have been muted for quality control. We recommend that you view the webinar tonight on a desktop or laptop computer, not on a mobile device, and that you or anyone else using your internet connection refrain from any heavy internet browsing such as streaming. You can download a PDF copy of the presentation in the Files box on the right-hand side of the screen. We have received a notification from Adobe Connect that due to unprecedented demand, they are experiencing some strain on the system, which may cause some issues. We really appreciate your patience and apologize for any inconvenience this may cause. If you have any technical difficulties, you can submit them in the Q&A pod on the far right-hand side of your screen, and I will help you out with that. This is also where you can submit any questions you have during the presentation, which will be addressed towards the end. With that, I would like to introduce you to our presenters today. Lena is a registered social worker and a trained teacher. She works in a children's mental health organization and has a private practice. Her mission is to empower individuals to achieve their goals. She has a special interest in working with individuals with ADHD in a therapeutic setting. In her work, Lena collaborates with parents, teachers, and administrators to support children with ADHD. Gary is an Ontario certified teacher. It brings him joy to empower students of all ages to learn and develop. He is particularly interested in supporting students with learning disabilities and ADHD and setting them up for success. Gary works with teachers to help them understand how to tailor remote learning experiences to ensure they are accessible for all. I've been working with Lena and Gary over the last few weeks, and they are super excited and passionate to be providing this information for you. We are so grateful to have their time and energy during these difficult times. So take it away, Lena and Gary.
Thank you. Can you hear us? Hopefully.
I can hear you, but hopefully, yeah, people will let us know if they can hear you all right. We're getting some yeses. That's great.
Okay, so you can hear us, you can see us. Beautiful. Thank you very much, everybody, for making it out to our webinar called Mission Impossible, Remote Learning for Children with ADHD. It's a pleasure to have you here, and our promise to you is that we're going to share, engage, and make sure that we make this worth your time, as well as engage your interest. Thank you. We're going to start things off with a poll, and as you can see on your screen, there is a poll that appeared. We would like to know who you are. So, are you a parent or a caregiver? Are you a student with ADHD? Are you an educator, a student support worker, or are you just here to listen? We're going to give you 30 seconds, and just a warning, we're playing a piece of the Mission Impossible theme song, and it might be a little loud, so I'm going to just caution you to bring down your volume, just so that you're not startled. Here we go, 30 seconds. That was unexpected,
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And Wendy, are we broadcasting this live?
Yes, folks should be able to see the results now.
Excellent, excellent. So we have, it seems like we have two-thirds. Yeah, two-thirds are parents and caregivers. We've got about a third as teachers and as well as student support workers. And then I'm pleased to say 3% do not want to be labeled, which is fantastic. Thank you very much. And we're going to head over to the next slide then. Yeah.
Sorry.
All right.
Okay.
So, as you heard Wendy introduce, I am an Ontario certified teacher, and I specialize in working with teachers to help them create a accessible remote learning experience for students with a variety of learning challenges and learning gifts. And Lena, what do you do?
So I'm a therapist, and as Wendy said, I work with children, parents, and adults on a variety of different mental health challenges. I have a very special interest in working with individuals with ADHD, which began in the beginning of my career when I was working with adults with ADHD to help them secure and maintain it. And later on, I'm working right now with parents and children and adults to help them with skills with ADHD. And just so you know, we're from Toronto.
Yes, very important.
Yes. Well.
Okay. So we have a couple of goals that we would like to set out. And you can see that they're on the screen right now. So I'm just going to give you a moment to take a look at them. And what I've done is I've highlighted the key words. So we are hoping by the end of our session together to really take a look at the unique challenges that students with ADHD and their families face in this different learning environment, we can say. We're going to take a look at an array of tools and strategies that you can take and use right away. And we, of course, are going to provide you with a few resources. So nothing too overwhelming. Just take a look at the challenges and some of the solutions. And you are going to have a lot of control over this conversation. So although we can't hear your voice or see your face, your vote is a very powerful tool that you have. So our agenda for the day, and we have some basic assumptions that we're working with as we put this presentation together. We are assuming that you, your child, or someone you work with has ADHD, and that you have access to an internet-connected device and a stable internet connection, both of which are being proven as you connect to our session now. Our agenda will start with the challenges, and we're going to go into tips and tricks. We're going to reflect and talk about next steps, and we're going to leave the last little bit of time for questions and answers. So if we don't cover something specific that you're looking for, then feel free to bring it up right at the end. So we're going to start with our challenges. Folks, we are going to put up another poll. It's a short answer, and we're going to put 1 minute on the clock. So just a friendly reminder again that the volume might be a little loud when the music starts playing. So you might want to bring down your volume. And we would just like to know, what have been your challenges with remote learning? What are you struggling with? What is making it difficult, more so than it was when it was face-to-face? So take a minute, enjoy the music, let us know your challenges, and we look forward to seeing what you have to say.
Thank you so much for everyone who's giving us your answers about what's been challenging for you. And I think that it's also helpful maybe for all of you to take a look at what others have answered, just to see that you're not alone with your challenges. And just from a quick glance, I think that we're going to address most things here during our presentation about how to tackle those challenges. Okay, so you can just take a quick look at what people have written. So the first challenge that we would like to talk about is the fact that a lot of people have given it different names of what's happening right now. Some people have said that it's homeschooling, others have said it's remote schooling. The problem with the two terms I've just mentioned is the fact that it indicates that you had a choice in the matter. You had a choice in schooling your kids at home. But what you're actually doing right now is crisis schooling, which means that it's a response to circumstances beyond our control. You had no choice in the matter, and everyone just does whatever works for them. So I think it's important to just be clear in the fact that it is challenging and it is hard, and it's not something you or your children were ever meant to do. But since we're doing it, let's see how we can make it a little bit easier and manageable. So the first thing I would also like to start with is talking about our needs. So what you're going to see over here is called Maslow's hierarchy. And if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, you'll know that it has 5 different levels of needs. And in order to progress to higher level of needs, you need to fulfill the lower ones. So the very bottom one over here, it's physiological needs, where it's to fulfill our needs of hunger, sleep, thirst, health. So all the things that our body needs in order to function. Over here, self-actualization, it's our need to expand our minds, being creative, taking a new class, organizing the closet like you've been planning to for years. So it's all those things that would need a lot of motivation from you. a lot of us, most of us are stuck over here in between physiological and safety needs. And until we have our safety need met, we're not able to study and learn and do all those things that we really want to be doing. Because we are in crisis schooling mode. We are living through a pandemic, and our safety right now is jeopardized a little bit, and our kids are feeling a lot of worry and stress. So we're going to talk today about strategies and tips about how to help your kids with establishing that feeling of safety. Another challenge is the fact that kids, and especially kids with ADHD, needed a clear separation between home and school. With everything that's happened overnight, parents became their kids' teachers. Your dinner tables became your kids' classrooms. Their siblings became their classmates. The separation that was used to be so clear between school and home is no longer there. And that makes it so much more challenging to plan, to schedule, to get focused on things, to have routines. So everything's just thrown off. So that's one big challenge as well. So another challenge is executive functioning. I think that if you're familiar with ADHD, executive functioning is something that's thrown around a lot, and that's because ADHD is known often as an executive functioning deficit disorder or disorder. And so we're just going to show a very quick clip about what it is, just to catch everyone up. Um,
Executive function is the brain's air traffic controller. It intercepts a tangle of inbound thoughts and impulses and steers them towards productive outcomes. Executive function helps students stay focused, plan ahead and set goals, regulate emotions, monitor their own learning, and think flexibly and creatively.
Okay, so thank you. So all the things that would be needed for us that executive functioning helps us achieve would, and the lack of kids with ADHD having it would make it so much more challenging for kids with ADHD to study at home. So executive functioning helps us with focusing, with structures, with routines, with getting started on tasks, um, with planning ahead. So all these things would make it so challenging when they're lacking. And that's one of the biggest reasons why remote learning for kids with ADHD is so hard.
Our students are, of course, equipped with all sorts of tools, and teachers, part of their job is to create and honor IEPs. During this time, honoring IEPs becomes challenging because the IEPs, the individual education plans that were created for students with ADHD, were created assuming that we are in a face-to-face environment, not a remote learning environment. A lot of the best practices to help students manage their executive functioning and to make sure that they're excelling are a lot harder to achieve when students are separated from their teachers and they're not in the regular classroom. So what we want to do is we want to be as accommodating as possible. And we still want to honor the accommodations and modifications. However, we want to be realistic that it's not going to be business as usual, and we're not going to be able to provide the same supports. So teachers sitting at home cannot provide the same supports and attention as they could when they're in the class with the students. But there are, of course, numerous benefits, believe it or not, to being at home and doing remote learning. So recent articles that both Lena and I took a look at have said that some students with ADHD are actually thriving for a multitude of reasons that we are going to talk about it, tips and strategies as well. But just to name a few, students don't have to compete for attention with classmates. We're cutting through the noise, so there's a lot less disruption and distraction from other students. There might be distractions from other places, but there isn't a source of noise necessarily as a class full of students. Possibly more one-on-one time with a parent or a caregiver if that option is available. And students are also able to do things at their own pace, more or less, and there is an emphasis on interest-based learning. So focusing maybe more on life skills and practical skills as opposed to focusing on pure academics, because the amount of content that teachers are expected to deliver to students is a lot less. It's a lot smaller than they would in a regular school day. So we're going to talk about some tips and tricks, Lena. Mm-hmm. That's the plan. And for our third poll, what we'd like to ask you is, what have you been doing to help your child or your student with ADHD to support remote learning? And again, we're going to put, it's a short answer, so 1 minute on the clock. Make sure you turn down that volume, and we would love to see your responses. Good luck.
Sorry, folks, I'm just doing some back-end stuff, helping people get on, so I'm going to bring everything up now. Ooh, that's wrong. There we go.
Thanks everyone for your responses. So a lot of the things that you've said, we're going to cover as well. I'm just looking at some of them and I'm finding it really interesting. So one of them said, I think, to give snacks throughout, which is a really interesting strategy. And someone said something about sunflower seeds, and that's something that helps with, I guess, for the child to do something with their hands. So that's really interesting. Oops, okay, so we're gonna go back to the slides here. So you can take it. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna talk about is helping kids manage feelings. And the reason why we're talking about it first is because, as we said before, if the child cannot get through the safety need met, then they cannot possibly learn. And you're not gonna get much out of them. And that's why it's so important to talk about it. So before we start talking about ways of managing feelings, I just want to mention that decades of research have shown that when kids have been put in adverse situations, whether it be war or any accident, as long as they had a consistent caregiver that was there with them throughout this time, that provided them with unconditional support, they turned out just fine. They had their reaction and their outcomes were the same as if a child had just maybe had a fall or broke his arm. So the most important thing that you can do for your child is really just be there. Even as a teacher, just being there, checking in with your students, showing that you care. So over here, I have a picture of a boy with a lot of different things that might help him. And the thing is, our kids have a lot of different thoughts, some that they're aware of, some that they're not. And same thing with the things that can help them. A lot of things, kids might not really be aware of what's actually helpful for them. They might not know what they need. They might not really know how they're feeling. And that's where you guys come in as parents and as adults in their lives, where you help name their feelings. You help them with managing those big feelings and emotions that they're having. So I'm not going to read all of these out because we can have a whole webinar just about this one slide. But I just want to take a look at them, and I want to encourage you, if your child is struggling emotionally, if they're anxious, stressed, if they're having big feelings like anger, sadness, I want to encourage you to reach out to the school social worker, to a therapist if you're working with one, or you can always reach out to me as well after this webinar for more support as well. And you can also ask more questions about it in the end of the Q&A. I could spend probably days talking about this one slide. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very passionate about this.
So another really important point of managing feelings is collaboration with your kids. So a lot of times it feels like a battlefield with your kids. You know, do your homework, do the laundry. Why is everything so dirty? Clean up the Lego. Everything is a battlefield. Everything oftentimes feels like it's you against your child, but it doesn't have to be this way all the time. You can team up with your child. So if, for example, your child is having a challenging time with getting up in the morning, speak to your child about it and say, you know what? First of all, you should validate and say, you know what? I know how hard it's been for you to get up. I know how challenging it's been this whole time that you're not seeing your friends and you're out of your routine. The problem is that we need to get work done because I'm worried that you're going to fall behind. Right? So get your child on board with figuring things out. So what you might do after that is you can create maybe a list. I'm going to just draw I'm not very good at drawing this, but let's say this is a piece of paper and you're going to take out a piece of paper and you're going to write what the problem is over here, let's say. And then you're going to come up with different solutions with your child. So like you're going to have 1, 2, 3, and so on. And have your child come up with ideas. No matter how ridiculous the ideas might be, put them down on paper. If your child's idea might be, oh, I'm going to wake up, take a rocket ship, and go to the moon, depends on how old they are, fine, put it down. Because later on, what you're going to do, after you've come up with your ideas and your child's ideas, what you can do is just cross it off the list, whatever didn't work. And if you see something that does work, you're going to circle it. And that's going to be something that you both agree on. Kids are much likely more to cooperate when the idea and the solution comes from them. So make your children part of the solution and not part of the problem.
And I have one thing to say about this slide, if I may. In the world of drama and improv, we have a very specific rule when we're doing improvisation and thinking on our feet, and it's called the yes and rule. Remember this one.
Mm-hmm.
Like Lena said, it doesn't matter how ridiculous it sounds. We just say yes. We're open to it. Because part of good brainstorming is not shooting down people's ideas. Even if you know that it's a ridiculous idea and that it will never go in your household, say yes. And just let them bring it all out just so you can see what's going on in their mind. Because the more information you have, the more you have to work with, and obviously you can steer them to good choices. You need to have them in a position where they've put everything out on the table and they trust that you are open to listening to what they have, because then they're not defensive.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're more willing to listen to you. It's a reciprocal process.
And it's like this with really any challenge that you might have with your children. or really anyone, teaming up always usually works. So that being said, teachers and parents, it's so important for you guys to team up right now as well. As always, it's always good to work together, but now I think more than ever. So this is just a letter. We have a link here for a letter that Kadak has provided, for a letter that parents can send educators about what's going to be most helpful for their children during these times, right? And parents and teachers continue communicating during these times. Teachers, you can call up to check on how things have been going, right? And parents, if something's not working, I know sometimes we're feeling like, oh, I don't want to be bothering the teacher too much. Bother them, because this is what your child needs, right? And as you all know, you have a lifelong journey of advocacy, and this is part of it. And I'm sure a lot of you have been doing it already. So you might not be able to access the link just from clicking here, but in the PDF version of the slides, you will be able to access it.
It's time for more choices. I seem to be doing all the polling, which is really fun.
Right.
You're just letting me do all the fun things. Well, we could talk about everything. However, we would like to put you in the driver's seats and provide as much choice as possible. So we have 5 things that we could potentially spend a portion of our tips and tricks presentation talking about. So we have motivation and organization and learning, strategies to increase focus, creating schedules and routines, making learning more accessible, and getting your own work done. We're going to put 30 seconds on the clock. Remember to turn down that volume, and we are asking for the top 3. So whatever the top 3 choices are out of the 5, those are the ones that we are going to focus on. Folks, this is live, real time. We didn't plan any of this. We have no idea what the top 3 are going to be, and we're going to let you decide our fate. So we have 1, 2, and 4. Motivation, strategies, and accessibility.
Perfect. And if we'll have more time, we will cover other things. I personally really like the slides we have about schedules and routines. So if we have time, we'll cover those as well. So we'll see.
Save that to the end. Right now, you got to give the people what they want.
Exactly.
Keep that.
So motivation is one of the things we're going to talk about, right? So we're going to talk about how to keep children organized, motivated, and engaged in learning. Now you might ask yourself, why do we put organized together with motivated and engaged? And the reason for that is because when kids are organized, they're more likely to be motivated as well. So the first thing to get kids to be motivated and engaged is to capitalize on their strengths. Kids with ADHD are very creative and innovative. Use that right now. Right now, they're not in a regular classroom where they're stuck to like a cookie cutter approach where they have to sit on a table and learn with textbooks. Let them do whatever it is that helps them and engages their strength, right? Let them move around and come up with projects that really capitalize on what they're good at. Focusing on interests. Oh, that's you here.
Well, I find everything interesting. That's mainly the problem. You know what your kid likes. You know what your student likes. That's part of your unfair advantage. If you ever find yourself asking, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Of course you know. You know what they like. You have to take that and use it for their good. To make good choices, right? That's part of putting the options on the table. It's part of sharing their interests with you that you would have gotten from that really good brainstorm that Lena was talking about earlier on. So if they have interests, which I hope they do, you can leverage that for learning, and it could be either academic or it can be real life skills. And this is where the teachers are a really great resource, because as trained pedagogues, we have the ability to connect interest to educational resources. And there's lots of really good stuff out there, especially with the current situation. There has been a multitude of new resources put through. So if you can connect the interests and the learning of your child or student by yourself, perfect. If you need some help, you've got an entire staff of teachers on board. So definitely reach out to them. A great example that Lena had brought up before is Minecraft. So Minecraft is something that we generally use for a lot of different things. So we use it for computational thinking, for logic, for math, for science. What can't you use Minecraft for? It's just a very creative element to help students develop and create in a digital space. Fairly safe most of the time. You still want to be conscientious and monitor it. So that's an example.
And I'm sure some of you might have been using Minecraft for learning. Others, your mind's been blown like, what? You can use Minecraft for learning? So yeah, definitely use it. There's a lot of information online also about how to use Minecraft for math and everything that Gary here has mentioned.
Yeah, you can really take any interest and just channel it the proper way. Lena, can you tell us about this meme?
Yeah. So rewards. Kids with ADHD thrive on rewards. And I saw a few of the people have said that that's something that's been helpful by giving like extra iPad time. So rewards really wire kids with ADHD brain. They stimulate the brain and helps them be more motivated and engaged in getting something done. So you might say, well, I don't have like a lot of money to go and buy a whole new Lego set every time, or go to the dollar store every day, especially now with not going to the stores much. You don't have to do any of this stuff. So rewards could be small things like experiential stuff. It could be like a small reward like petting the dog, doing some meditation, playing with a Lego, or it could be bigger rewards like playing a board game they like, or cooking a meal that they really enjoy doing together. So a lot of people also like using reward charts, and I personally really like reward charts as well, because it's a visual way for kids, and especially for kids with ADHD, to visualize and see what they're working towards. There's a whole bunch of reward charts that you can find online if you Google it, and I'm sure most of you have heard of them before. If you do need supports in creating reward charts, you can always feel free to reach out to me later on for more help with how to do reward charts, or reach out to any supports you guys have. And really, on Instagram. Yeah, Instagram is really good for this kinds of things and with ideas.
I'd say Pinterest as well.
Pinterest.
I find a lot of things about
that's
Pinterest
what I was thinking, yeah.
Not as cool as you with Instagram.
Right. And I was thinking about Pinterest.
Too ancient for that, which causes me a lot of stress. Anybody else here stressed? Well, stress is actually an excellent tool if used properly. As you can see by the lovely curve on your screen, stress is essentially that thing that's going to get somebody out of bed. But it can also be the thing that drives them back into bed if there's too much of it. So we want to use stress strategically, essentially in the form of due dates. So you want to have things due by a certain time. If they have an indefinite due date, or just do it when you can, and the individual that is doing the task doesn't have the greatest time management, well, it's probably not going to get done. You want to just find that really good balance. And again, you are an expert on your child and an expert on your students. And you know the proper level of stress. So if it was due today, would that cause too much stress? Yes. So no productivity there. But if it was due in 3 days and you properly scaffolded and chunked the task, or you gave the proper supports and building blocks as a parent, would they be likely to get it done? Yes. It doesn't have to be the best thing they've ever created. It just has to be good enough. So knowing how to manipulate due dates and set hard due dates of when things need to get done by is very, very important in order to use stress as a positive tool. And you want to be aware when there's no motivation or too much stimulation, right, that throws kids out of whack. Let's take a look at the next one. Oh, staying on track. This is a fun one. A lot of times, my students who have ADHD will not do a task, not because there isn't enough stress, it's because they have no idea what is actually the end goal. So what is the point of me doing all these math exercises? This is just an endless bit of busy work. Well, no, if you do all these math exercises, your math facts are going to be a lot better. And if your math facts are going to be a lot better, then the next time that we play a card game and use multiplication, you might beat me. And a lot of my students are very competitive. So they know that if they have a competitive advantage that they can get from just doing some procedural fluency in math, that's not a bad end goal. But that needs to be made really explicit and clear to them. Another thing that I've found works really well for my students is frequent check-ins. So you don't have to hover over them all the time, but the more they know that someone is watching and checking and follow up, that they're accountable and have to report to somebody, the more likely they are to do it. Even, and again, that's the stress part. So I'm going to check on you in half an hour to see how you're doing, and I would like to see progress. That's one of the things that I generally tell them, is that it doesn't have to be done, it doesn't have to be perfect. I just need to see that you've progressed in the last half an hour and you're not in the same spot. Because that helps us fight procrastination. Essentially just doing one small thing for 1 minute, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, just to get that ball rolling will help us provide our students with really good momentum, and the task completion can be a lot more realistic that way instead of not having the momentum at the start.
So, Gary, I'm just curious, when do you feel like parents have become cops if they're constantly checking in on their kids?
Well,
what can they do to not make it seem like they're cops, and for their kids to be like, okay, enough with the check-ins already, like I know what I'm doing?
You could, before you start checking in, Lena, you can involve your kids in co-creating what check-ins look like.
Oh.
Yeah.
So teaming up with your kids?
That sounds like collaboration to me.
Collaboration.
Oh no.
Yep.
Oh, we use that word again.
Yeah.
It's true though. The more influence and power they have over how things are done, the more they're likely to follow the plan. If they don't want you to check in on them for an hour, you gotta trust. You gotta trust your kid, because they will be watching you, and they will watch that you come in an hour. So if you don't show up, that's not good. You've got to follow up as well. So you make a deal, you follow up, they promise to do this, you promise to do this. That's really the basis of trust, by co-creating and collaborating on that. I'm really happy you're reminding me about that.
Right. And if it's not working out, if you come and check in your kid in an hour, you see that an hour is way too long of a time for a check-in, then modify your plan.
Yeah.
Say, you know what, that was our initial plan. What can we do? Like, what's a realistic time frame for me to check in? And how would you like me to check in? If your kid has a phone, you can say, would you like me to send you a quick text to see how you're doing?
Ooh, a text. How exotic.
Whatever it is, right? So, yeah, so basically collaboration and teaming up with check-ins. You're fighting for procrastination?
I already fought procrastination by giving momentum. You gotta, I don't know. We're going to work on the attentive listening here. Lena?
Okay, so focus. So you guys want to talk about how to increase focus.
It's topic 2.
So the number one thing that we recommend is to start your kid's day with aerobic exercise. So some of you have heard it, some maybe have not heard it yet, but for anyone, but especially kids with ADHD, if you start a day with having some aerobic exercise, getting the heart going, it will increase focus when they just start working, and it will really help them. Okay, prime working time. So prime working time is the most productive time of the day where kids or you can get the work done. For kids with ADHD, if they're taking medications, it might be the prime working time might be when the medication is at its peak. Don't expect your child to do work when the medication is just starting to take off, or maybe when they're groggy in the morning, or when the medication is already dropping down. So just really utilize the prime working time on when they're most productive. Environmental tips. So in order to help with focusing, try to minimize distractions as much as possible. Designate a study area for your child to work in. So it could be your kitchen table or whatever it is, but just so that your child needs to have routines and they need to have consistency. So it can't be that one day they're in one room, another day they're in another. They need to visualize. So I know it's not a classroom, but if they're studying at the kitchen table, that's going to be hopefully their consistent place to study. And removing visual clutter from them because, as you know, kids with ADHD, they'll like, oh, squirrel, oh, that's so they'll find different things.
Squirrel. Oh, that's funny.
So they'll find different things that will distract them. So what a lot of people have found helpful to do is using like Bristol boards or like different like things to just remove any visual clutter from them, so they can only really see the computer or worksheets or whatever it is they're working on.
And that was one of the suggestions that we got in the poll. Second poll, I think. Somebody said that they designate a work area. I love timers. When I am teaching, I have this nice big timer with a red piece on it, and it decreases, and then it goes there. That. However, you don't have to necessarily use something like that. Now, you've seen that we've actually used timers throughout the presentation, not because I want to listen to the Mission Impossible theme repetitively at different intervals.
You sort of do.
I do. That's true. That's absolutely true. It's a little bit selfish. However, it also constrains the task. So Parkinson's law, which some of you might have heard of, some of you might have not, is that the task will expand to fill the time that is given. I give you 5 minutes to finish writing one sentence as opposed to giving you an hour. A lot of people are going to take the hour or the 5 minutes and they're going to expand the task to fill the time. How can we fight this? Well, we want to make less time with more focused work, almost like exercise, right? With HIIT exercises that you up the intensity, but you lower the time considerably. And I'm not saying that that is the case here because we have all sorts of processing and executive functioning challenges. However, a timer is an effective device that I've used with a lot of students with ADHD and other exceptionalities. So I put two on the screen. One is the tomato timer, or the Pomodoro, which is 25 minutes of work, 5 minutes break, 25 minutes of work, and it just rotates through. And then the other one is just a good old plain egg timer. So if you actually have a physical egg timer at home, those are really good. I have, where's my egg timer here? Oh yeah, I'm messing up the whole camera here. So I do have my little egg timer here, and that helps me, my little kitchen timer, that helps me stay on task. And just the physical winding of it and the noise and the complaining after the noise from the other room to turn off the noise is very useful. Yeah. Yes, yes, that is you.
Yeah.
And just having a physical reminder to keep on time, because of course a lot of my students with ADHD have very poor grasp of time. They don't feel it the way that other people do. So you have those two digital resources there, and they're available in the PDF version. You can't click them on here.
And I see that somebody in the Q&A also shared a different timer. So
Timer. I can't wait to try that one out.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Veronica. Good. So we have some fidget tools, and these are, of course, very popular ammunition used by teachers in the classroom. I have a whole basket of them in my class. And what they do is that they're just physical objects that students who tend to fidget can focus their fidgeting energy into. a piece of Play-Doh, a fidget band, like a exercise resistance band that you put at the bottom of a chair, and you can just hit your legs on instead of tapping them. Those are really good. So things that you can do with your hands mindlessly as you pay attention, because a lot of my students have told me that they need to be doing something in order to be focused. Fair enough. The fidget spinner, I kind of go either way on it. Some people say that it really helps them focus. Some people say that it takes away from focus. So you want to make sure that the tool you're giving the student or your child is not taking away from the focus. So if it's so interesting to look at that fidget spinner, then to pay attention to the things that you're trying to get them to pay attention to using the fidget spinner, then that's not a good tool. And we want to use the proper tool for the job. Speaking of tools, we need to sit on something while we do our work. And we have a young daughter, 15 months, and the picture you see to your left of the fully grown men in baby bouncers just had to make it in there because there's like a sick humor that we have of these men bouncing in their offices in front of their computers, because that's really great. That's really good physical activity. However, the way that they sit is also very interesting, because you don't have to have your kids sitting on a chair necessarily. They can, if you have a medicine ball or an exercise ball, they can sit on that. They can stand. So I do a lot of my work at a standing table or a makeshift standing table. And the idea is that you want their bodies to be working as well as their minds. And the more active their bodies are, the more focused generally they are. Again, because of that fidgeting element, they're doing two things at the same time. One is fairly mindless, so they're using their core to keep their balance. And the other is actual focus on a task. And you want to be careful. So if it's a really heavy focused task, you probably maybe want to put them on a regular chair. But if it's a semi-medium focused task, then sitting on a medicine ball or bouncing around or moving around is really, really good, because it gets their creative juices flowing, it releases a little bit of energy, and it might help them be more productive.
Yeah, so I just also want to add that in the classroom, kids don't really have the option of getting up when they need to, or, I mean, if they do, they're probably going to be punished by the teacher, or kids will look at them strangely. But the benefit of being at home is that they can take as many body breaks as they want. They can move around as much as they want. Learning does not have to be constricted to a desk. You can be playing basketball, well, if the basketball courts are open, or if you have it somewhere. You can just be moving around, going for a walk while studying and doing different things, right? So it doesn't have to be just like sitting around. And yeah, a kid might like run around and do one math question, then go and run around again, and then come back and do another math question. So whatever works for your kids. Next slide. Here.
Well, this one is fun because it can go two ways. I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know what I'm doing. What's the difference? Very simple. In the first case, I don't know what I'm doing, there is no clear understanding of the end goal, which is something that we've already discussed. So I will not bore you with that. They need to know what the end goal is. Otherwise, they have no idea why they're doing what they're doing. The other take on that is that they don't have the skill sets to do the task. They're totally clear on the end goal. I have to build a fortress. However, I lack the architectural skills and training for that. I understand what I need to do. I have no ability to do it. You want to make sure once your child or your student sets off on a task, because they've been motivated and they've got a dedicated place and they're performing at their prime time, that they actually have the building blocks to achieve the task. And if you see that they don't, you have two options. You can either equip them with the building blocks. If it's a pretty simple skill that can be taught quickly and you know how to do it, that's fine. However, if you can see that there is a clear gap and it's going to take a reasonable amount of time to teach them all the skills they need to complete the task, you need to change the task. So we need to modify because that end goal is not realistic. Right? We talk about setting SMART goals, and if somebody doesn't feel like they can achieve something, or you're setting them up to achieve a goal they have no skill to achieve, you're setting them up to fail. So you want to exercise professional judgment or just common sense. Can my kid actually do this? Do they have the basic building blocks to achieve this? They should, but do they? And it's just, that might be causing some issues if you see that work is not really getting done.
It's you again.
It's me again. Yeah, I'm unfocused. That's why. That's why I'm tasked with this slide of Kevin Hart. Kevin saying, "You gotta focus. You gotta focus." It's true. Listen, I am very easily distracted, as I'm sure many of you can relate. Anything that's shining is very attention-grabbing for me. I particularly struggle with spending time on the computer, which I'm spending a lot more time on as I teach and meet with teachers online. I just find that after a while, all these shiny buttons and all these screens and all these tabs just take me away from whatever I was actually supposed to do. So what I've been doing, actually for quite a long time, and I've just made sure to be really consistent in it, is I use a couple of simple tools. So I really believe there are really good free tools that you can use to keep your focus while you're online, which is where a lot of the learning seems to be happening. So the first one, Waste No Time, some of you might be familiar with that. It's a website that basically allows you to install an application on your browser, and I would install it across all of your browsers. So if you have more than one, do it over all of them. What happens there is you select either the websites you are or not allowed to look at. So if you're only allowed to be on one website, you can select that and it will lock all other websites out. Can't go there unless it's that one. And the other thing that it does is you can set a timer. So I can only use my internet for 30 minutes. What happens after 30 minutes is it locks your browsers. There's no way to go. You would actually have to shut down your computer and restart in order to unlock it. So
it's a helpful tool, but really annoying if your partner comes and tries to use the computer and it locks you out.
I know. So it's a little bit, maybe a little bit too much.
Tool, yeah.
It's a little bit too much, but the idea is that a lot of people make bad choices because of impulsivity. So if we can put a little bit of time, and it takes at least 30 to 45 seconds for a computer to shut down and restart, maybe within that 30 to 45 seconds, you can get your sanity and clarity back and say, what am I doing? No, I have to be on task. I shouldn't be watching endless YouTube videos of kittens. That is not what the assignment was. And the second resource that I put right under Waste No Time is, of course, the screen time and parental controls on mobile devices. Those have a lot of functionality, especially with newer devices. They're free, and if you just tinker around with them a little bit, screen time is more generous because it'll just recommend that you stop using the screen. However, with parental controls, you can actually lock people out of using screens and browsers and certain applications. So we're talking about exercising control over the device. It's not the internet's fault that we procrastinate or go off task. It's our choices and the way our brain is leading us to make bad choices. So we're trying to just manipulate the tools to set ourselves and our kids up for success.
And I see Josh here, he has also recommended Google Family Link for Android devices, I'm guessing, to control the screen time as well. So thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
Okay, so we're going to skip schedules and routines. We might come back to it.
We'll come back to this one later, hopefully, if we have time. I know how much.
Okay, so making content more accessible. Oops, scary.
Squirrel!
Yeah.
There's that squirrel again. Less words, more visuals, less talking, more doing, less time, more productivity, less content, more comprehension. That pretty much summarizes everything that I've talked to you about from this point. So, next.
But I just want to add here the fact that when teachers or parents give any instructions or any piece of information, just less is more. Um, Break it up with bullet points, chunk things up, which brings me to actually the next slide.
Yes, yes. Speaking of breaking it up, a lot of time teacher speak is very confusing, and we forget that not everybody speaks in educational lingo. We do have something which is a very common sense and popular strategy among teachers, what some people call chunking. In the computer science field, we call it decomposing, but the idea is all the same. We take one complex task and we break it up into its most basic steps, whether that's making breakfast, as you can see on your slide, or baking a cake. Every complex product comes from a series of simpler processes where instructions are followed. If you're working on a complex task, it's very, very important in order to be able to know what to do is to break it up into those manageable small pieces. That's a skill in itself, actually. However, you can use the example that you see with making breakfast, and feel free to ask your student or your child, hey, how would you make breakfast? By doing this, actually, it's very helpful because it's you're practicing procedural fluency, and they're practicing the skill of taking something and breaking it down into smaller parts, which is a very important life skill in general in the work world and in the home world.
And you can obviously use it for school stuff, like if there's an essay, so breaking it up for what's the theme, what's your first paragraph going to be about. So yeah, just breaking things up to make things easier and more accessible. Okay, so we're done with making content more accessible. Yeah, should we do the schedule slides?
Well, you know what? They are pretty good.
You know what? I'm not gonna do all of them, but I just want you to hear. So I'm just gonna show you a sample schedule. I think I can just pull it up here, right, Wendy?
I think Wendy will need to help us with that.
Wendy, can you pull up the sample schedule, please? Perfect, thank you. Okay, so I created a sample schedule. You have access to this one. If you click on the link, you'll see that you have access to this sample schedule. And as you can see, it's color coded, which really helps kids with ADHD. And what you're going to see is that there is 3 study blocks over here. So my recommendation is to not have more than 2 to 3 at most study blocks in a day. And we'll just quickly look at what the study blocks look like. But I just want to mention also that it's really important during this time to include social time. So social time is super important to include because your kids are probably feeling disconnected. And to include free time that they have a choice of what to do. Okay, yeah.
Don't use that yet. I just want to draw people's attention to the fact that during the breaks, which are in green, you can see that there are choices. And as you go through the slides, and I just want you to pull up that slide about short breaks and long breaks, because again, you want to brainstorm, you want to have a collection of different things that people can do, because as long as students feel like they're making choices, we are in a really good position. And I really recommend that. So we can actually close the schedule.
Yeah, so we can close the schedule. So just for the breaks, it's always good to come up with what their breaks are going to look like. Okay, you know what? Sorry, I'm just going to go here first. Sorry, it's not super organized.
Hey, I made this slide. It's organized.
No, it's not organized in terms of me jumping around.
Yes.
Your slide is great. Oh. Yeah. So I'm just going to talk here about what a study block might look like. So for kids that are in elementary school with ADHD, they might be able to focus only for 5 to 20 minutes at a time, but every kid is different and every child will be able to focus differently. So you know your kids and you follow their ability, how long they can focus. For kids in middle school and high school, they can usually focus for 15 to 45 minutes at a time. Just for the sake of an example of what a study block looks like, we use 15 minutes. So your child will study for 15 minutes, then 5-minute break, study for 15 minutes, 5-minute break, and then another 15 minutes of study, and then a longer break of 30 minutes or an hour, however you decided. I quickly saw a question about how do you make sure that they're going to go back to studying after the 5 minutes, right? So I just want to answer that by saying that what you can do is you can use timers, right? So that just like we talked about timers, so time the break. So that, and they can set up their own timer as well so that they know that, okay, I'm setting it up after 5 minutes, my break is going to be done, right? And as long as they have the schedule written down, have things visually check mark when they're done something, they're more likely to cooperate and to be able to do this. And if it's not working out, again, sit down with your kid and say, hey, you know what? This was our agreement that you're going to work 15 minutes and then a 5-minute break. Is a 5-minute break not enough for you? Or how can we make this work? How can you get back to work after, right? So again, collaborate with your child.
And I'm just going to throw one more thing out there, not to
Go ahead.
say anything bad about Lena's scheduling. However, 3 study breaks or 3 study blocks is fine. Kids like to be clever, or at least like to think that they're clever a lot of the times. And if they're able to if they can manage to do all the work in one study block because they have very intense and high focus, and then don't need the other 2, we're not. Look, I understand there's value to busy work because you have things to do, so you need them to be occupied with other projects, and I respect that. You just don't want to extend a task that can be done in 10 minutes to a task that can be done in 30 minutes, unless there's really a lot of value to it. Kids pick up on this very easily. They know when you're getting them to do busy work, and they know when you're getting them to do really interesting, inquiry-driven, interest-driven things. So it's a general guideline, and I think that it's just very important to use the intensity when possible to show them that if they can get things done quickly to an acceptable degree. So we're not saying garbage work, but I finished it, which is something that happens a lot with my students. Funny enough, they know they're going to send them back and that they're going to have to redo it. So it's actually more energy to do it quickly and poorly than to do it properly, but still quickly and efficiently.
Okay, so quickly, what the breaks might look like. So you can co-create the maybe cards of what the breaks might look like. So having deciding ahead of time what short breaks might be, what the longer breaks might be. And so I think all of you probably know that kids with ADHD oftentimes have a hard time with choosing things. So let's say it's break time and your child decides, oh, I'm not sure if I want to get a snack now, go to the bathroom, or do some mindfulness, I don't know. And then they spend the whole break just making decisions. Yeah. So the recommendation is either before the break starts, use 1 minute like on the clock with a timer for them to quickly make a decision, right? So that they know that their decision-making process is timed. And again, you're teaching them a life skill this way as well of making decisions. Yeah. Or before the study block begins, they can make the decision of what their breaks are going to look like beforehand, right? So that there's no conversation or no choice while they're doing it, and they've made a good choice beforehand. Okay, so we're not going to talk about these things. Yeah. So just wanted to mention how you can get your own work done. One of the ways you can get your own work done, and I know how potentially unrealistic it is to get your own work done while you have to also help your child with ADHD with remote learning. I know how hard it is, and I know that it's maybe not sustainable in the long run, but here are some suggestions. So you can work alongside your child so that if your child is okay with it, you're doing your own work as long as it's not like video or like distracting, and they're working there as well so that your child is accountable and you can get some work done. And maybe you get your own work done when you give them screen time. And it's okay to be a little bit more generous with screen time now, um, because we're living in a crisis mode and it's a very different reality we're living in. And just so that your kids are clear that screen time is going to change later on. And alternating with a partner if you can or if you have one so that you can change who's working and who's helping your child. Again, we know how difficult it is because we know, I'm just going to go, sorry, jumping around here. So we know how many hats you're wearing right now and how much work you're doing, right? So you're a child's entertainer, communication director, teacher, chef. You've added so many more roles to your already huge list of roles from before. Make sure it's so important right now, more than ever, for you to do your own self-care. Because if you're stuck, just like your child, in the sort of like second level of the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy, and you're feeling anxious, worried, angry, sad, you might not be as available to your child. So do whatever it is that helps you and your soul just to feel better and for you to feel okay and to be able to get through the days. Because right now we're probably in survival mode.
All that being said, you're sitting here, you're listening to us, giving you all these nice ideas. Oh, okay, that's good, that's good, that's good. None of it works for my situation. We saw 2 messages already. People saying this is not realistic. And that's why I think Lena was really good to start with the fact that this is not a normal situation in any sort of realization. This is not business as usual. The expectations have to be really modified. If you're doing crisis schooling, then you're doing what you think is best for your students based on the resources they're being provided. And you're not expected to be teaching them. You're not expected to be helping them complete things wholly because you have your things to do as well. And you are just going to do the best you can with what you have. And this slide, I think, is really spot on, where really you're just trying to keep your kids safe. You're trying to keep your kids as as pleased as you can. So they let you do your own work. But at the end of the day, if they haven't done the schoolwork or they haven't completed it perfectly, then it's not going to be a defeat. It's essentially, look, you have kept them safe. You've shown them as much love and patience as you can. They live another day to take on the adventure of life, and they'll catch up. They'll catch up. And everybody is going to need catching up. And when we return to whatever the new school reality is, that people that I work with and the teachers that I'm in communication with, they know it. They're aware of it because their own kids are going through it. So things are going to look very, very different. And there isn't this expectation that you've been doing all the work and that your kids are on top of everything. We're just hoping people are going to come out of this with some mental health and some resilience and just recognize this is really, really hard.
So we know we've just spent a whole webinar talking about what works, but really if it's not working, ditch it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do what works for you right now. Focus on life skills and really if it helps you as a parent or as an educator, wherever you are, with your mental health and helps your child with their mental health, that's the most important thing right now.
I have 2 more cents to add. May I?
Yes.
You know your kids best. You know your students best. You know what's going to work for them. Nobody else needs to be giving you unsolicited advice about it, although we are. Don't have to take any of it. Or you can take some of it. It's actually pretty good advice. In summary?
Summary, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, this is my slide.
Yeah,
okay. I think I kind of covered this. We talked about mental health. We talked about scheduling and doing what works for you. Communication and collaboration really is the key to success. So you want to make sure that all those channels are open and the prime working time and focusing on strengths and interests. I think we're telling you things that you already know. So we're just really validating that you know what you're doing. Good job. Good job.
So one last poll. What you're gonna do for us is in a minute. Well, maybe you know what? We're not gonna set a timer maybe for this one because it might take a
No
little bit
timer.
longer. So in 6 words, we want you to share with us in the chat window, in the poll window, um, what are the next steps you're gonna be doing after attending this webinar? So 6 steps, whatever.
Not
So
six.
6 words, not 6 steps.
Doesn't have to be a sentence, just 6 words that come to mind after spending some quality time with us. What are you taking away? What are 6 words that you're leaving here with as to what you can do
So it could be like
next?
timer, schedule, digit, whatever it is, like mental health, whatever it is that you think would be helpful.
Yes. Yes, we're getting some very good responses here. Yes. Mm-hmm.
All really good things you guys are putting. I like some people have written one word.
Good. What do you say, Lena? We've done a lot of talking, and I think that it's time to let these good people ask their specific questions that we might have not addressed, as we did to our very best. So once you finish your 6 word story, feel free to put your questions into the Q&A window right here below. And what we'll do is we will sort and pick them, and Wendy will also help us with that as well. Right, Wendy?
I am here to help. There is one question that through that we could maybe speak to while we're waiting for folks to submit their questions into the Q&A box. And one of them was the schedule wasn't really an option for them, given that their son is in grade 9 and has a full-time kind of course load. So do you have any, I guess, recommendations, thoughts, suggestions around maybe that environment or that situation?
I would do a follow-up to, and I saw that question as well.
Yeah.
I would ask why the schedule is not as realistic, simply because I know that, you know, for semester and non-semester options, at least in Ontario, there's, I mean, it's a pretty fair amount of work that needs to be done. So I'm just curious as to, is it that the student doesn't feel they have control, they're not sure what assignments are coming down the pipes? Is it too structured? I would like some clarification on that question.
Okay.
I don't have enough information to answer it. However, Lena, you have a different opinion.
Yeah, I would be curious also about why the schedule is not working. What is it that's standing in the way? My guess is from the way the question was phrased is the fact that it's unrealistic because of the fact that parents also need to work and it might be hard to create a schedule. I'm just making assumptions here. Really, I think you can do whatever works for you.
They've actually told. So it's an online school. There's no control of the schedule.
Oh, okay.
So, wow. I mean, and then essentially the schedule is set.
Mm-hmm.
It's typed in, no control of the schedule. Mm-hmm. So then, is that really an issue, or what? If that schedule
Sorry, we're getting some delay
right
now. One other question that we got was that an agenda has been set, but they're having trouble getting their child to follow it.
So in that situation, I would
Wait a minute,
revisit
actually.
things with the child and see. Sorry, I think we're talking at the same time. So in that situation, I would probably revisit things with the child and see why is the agenda not being followed? Are the expectations realistic? Are the rewards things that the child wants to work on? So having rewards for kids with ADHD is very important. Again, collaborating with your kids and seeing how can you make this work. And it's very possible that your child might still be in Maslow's hierarchy. They might still be on the safety net where they might be feeling anxious and worried whether or not they're telling you or not. Because kids sometimes, most of the time, don't really know how they're feeling. They just might be acting out by refusing to do work, by fighting with their siblings. So I would first make sure that they're okay with their feelings before proceeding to get them to engage in any schoolwork. And if you've done that and you feel like they can progress to higher levels of needs that they can actually learn, just figuring things out with them, just working with them and saying, how come it's not working? Right? What can I do to help you with this?
That's fair. There was a question, Lena, from Shauna, who says, "How can you deal with your child triggering you during this time without support as a full-time parent?"
That's extremely challenging because you are at home with your child and your child might be triggering different things for you. My best recommendation, I think, for this is for you as a mom to reach out for your own sports and to do whatever it is that you need to do in order to feel good. Do some mindfulness, maybe start the day with some breathing. Whenever you feel like your child is triggering you, take a few deep breaths and then step away from the situation and then come back to it. Um, I feel like that question is quite complex because we don't have enough information, but I would really encourage you to seek support if you feel like you need to.
Thank you. Keep them coming. Keep them coming, folks. Anything that we didn't cover that you were curious about, that you disagree with, that you might have other thoughts about, we'd love to hear all your questions. What was the one part that we didn't cover, that people didn't choose to cover?
I think it's mostly this, well, the schedule and people and getting their own work done, which we sort of did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we kind of
The
covered that.
schedule we didn't cover a few slides. No big deal.
That's true. That's true. Okay.
One of the suggestions in since we're still waiting for questions, one of the suggestions in the question slide, sorry, not questions, in the schedule slides, was to create a name for each task potentially. So if let's say you decide that your child is going to be doing math on Monday, you can call it Math Monday or History Tuesday, right? So that helps with creating also schedules, and that's the same thing with doing the laundry or anything like laundry Monday or whatnot. So see maybe not the question.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do with a child that doesn't want to take breaks, just wants to get the work done? Believe that breaks are still important. Ray, do you want to answer that?
Oh, yes. Oh. Doesn't want to take breaks, just wants to get the work done so that they don't have to do any work. The research is very interesting in this field because when you're working for a long period of time, breaks ensure that productivity, which decreases, the longer you work, the less your productivity is. And the idea of a break is just to give you an opportunity to recharge a little bit so that you can keep going. If you have somebody who is able to keep going without the need for breaks and the quality of work isn't compromised, then that is the way that they are going to do it. If they're sitting for hours working, there's a lot of things that you can pull up online that just show that if you had worked for 25 minutes and had taken a 5-minute break and worked for another 25 minutes, you could have been done this in an hour as opposed to working on it straight for 2 hours with no breaks. So the idea is that if they don't take a break and they're working for an extended period of time, they are going to take a lot longer to complete the same task as they would if they work intensively, take a short break, and then work intensively again. And that, you can even do that as an experiment. One day is have them work for an hour straight with no breaks, or half an hour, and then or do like 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. So 10-minute work, 10-minute break, a 5-minute break, and a 10-minute work. So the intensity does help with keeping the stress level elevated and for them to stay focused, because the longer they work, the more tired they get. So I'd be curious to learn and hear more about that specific situation.
I'm also wondering, so as we know, kids with ADHD tend to hyperfocus. So is it possible a child is really enjoying the task and is hyperfocusing? So we have another question here from Shanna, who would love to learn to add more things to your child's IEP, but not sure what to ask for. So I think it's a question for Yuri.
Sure. The IEP creation process is a very, how should we say, it's a very bureaucratic process, right? It starts with teacher observation and parental and administrative input, and then we have the different varieties. So we have the IAP, which is the individualized, basically accommodated plan, and then we have the IEP, which is a legal document. And if something is in the IEP, then a teacher and the school administration is obligated to do their best to follow it. Sometimes they can do it, sometimes it's challenging. If you think there are things that are going to benefit your child, different accommodations or modifications, then I would bring that up directly with the teacher, because that's the person that would be in the best position to, first of all, they can start implementing those things right away, even if they're not in the IEP. And if they see that it's really effective, then it's something that they should be doing anyway. And they can also get the process started if they want to reinsert it into the IEP. But I wouldn't worry about formalizing this too much. If you know that something works well and it's a reasonable ask for the teacher to do, and then reach out. We talked about communication is really key, and just have a conversation about it. Teachers, I know, are very open and willing to do what they can to support students remotely, and you are spending a lot of time with your child, so you are really an expert in this, and they really want you to share your expertise.
I also want to add the fact that so a lot of teachers might be doing Google Meets, or some are, some aren't. So if you're finding that your child is having a hard time processing the information that's being spoken at during the live classrooms, then you can potentially, as an IEP, ask the teacher to provide information, the information that you might be talking about beforehand, if the teacher is able to, because we have to remember that teachers are also doing crisis schooling right now. For the teacher to also provide things like breaking things up to bullet points, chunking tasks, to even when giving worksheets to not clutter too much things on the worksheet, and maybe just writing a few questions at each time. So just some of the few things that might be helpful. For teachers also, one of the things you can ask is to color code things and to make things more visually appealing. And question?
Yeah, so it's just a follow-up to the one, to the I don't want to take breaks question. So hold on, like a broken record. So Jason, I'm sorry that you're obviously you're trying to do what's proven by research and what seems to be best practices. I would really suggest that you do what you can. It sounds like your child is very persistent in the fact that what they're doing is correct because they just want to get the work done and move on. So I'm wondering if there are ways to take the task that they're doing and make it so that they can get it done well, relatively well, in the period of time they're doing it. So that might be a conversation also with the teacher as well as maybe ask the teacher to maybe break apart. So take whatever they're assigning and break it apart into smaller pieces so that you're maybe for other kids in the class, this is something that they are working on every other day or 1 or 2 times a week. And for your child, it'd be something to work on every day, but in smaller pieces. So even during that really concentrated time, they're still able to produce something.
So I just saw that Jason's son is 16, which means he's a teenager who thinks that he is a little adult. And as we know, teenagers often don't listen much to parents.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So my suggestion would be also to just try to talk to your child and say, are you happy with the work you're producing? Let's look at what you produce in the first, let's say, 15 minutes versus the last 30 minutes. Are you happy with it? And your kid who just wants to get the work done, be like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. Right? So again, you can collaborate and say, you know what? I know you can do more. And I know that you can achieve so much more. Try to work with them with rewards. Rewards can also mean that giving them specific praise. So specific praise is not saying like, oh, good job, you did a great job. Specific praise means I'm really proud of you of how you've solved this problem and how much time and dedication you took to do this. Right? So giving a specific praise for what you see him doing well, and asking him, are you happy with the work that you've done, or do you think that there's something here that can be improved? Um, it's hard because our kids with ADHD, they just want to move on to more fun and engaging things. So also thinking, is the work that the child is doing engaging enough for them? Right? Maybe you can modify it in a way that's going to be more engaging and that they'll want to continue working. And if they want to work for the hour, fine, let them work for the hour if they can keep focused as long as they're engaged in what they're doing.
I'm seeing that Wendy wants us to wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I just therefore want to take this opportunity to thank everybody, Wendy behind the scenes in Quebec for giving us the opportunity and for you for working so hard. And of course, for our lovely participants with their thoughtful questions, for giving us your time. We hope that what we've started sharing with you today is just an opportunity to look at this situation a little bit differently. You don't have to worry about absorbing everything you saw and taking it and trying it all right away. We're hoping that through that six-word story, you will be able to take one small step forward and just hopefully have one small positive difference.
And sorry, I was just scrolling through the slides. I just want to encourage you, if you do need extra supports or if you want to clarify anything, feel free to reach out to us on the PDF version. This purple things here will be visible, so you'll be able to click on it and see how you can connect with us as well. But thank you very much for taking the last hour and a half to be here with us and listen to us. It was really a privilege